Hello, everyone. Don't look behind you. I had to do it at least one time. Welcome to Minecraft. I, started doing this and realized, oh yeah, I should probably record this. Yeah, so today we are resurfacing that little island. Because... I don't know. I honestly don't even know. There are some pigs in there, which is kind of funny. So we need... I came back here for shears, actually. We have a shovel. I don't have any shears because I keep taking them with me and leaving them down there in the underground. I don't think we're starved for resources, though. What do you think? Are we starved for resources? Comment down below. Yeah. Since the mining video, I actually refined the technique somewhat. And it's pretty efficient and pretty fast. I specifically wanted to start the video when it was day, and then that, whatever, let's get there before mobs have a chance to spawn due to proximity reasons. And let's start off by lighting up the edge. Gimme. She's a 10, but she doesn't plug creeper holes. Oxen. Well, that's a map. There's there's a house. What's all this then? Okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. I'm going to, I don't want to do it now. I'm going to, check that out eventually. I assume. Wow, it's not, not every day you see that. Huh. Is this some update thing? Nah, I don't know. Look, I'm gonna be honest. Ah, fuck. Sir, did you place the map? I don't know. It's a mystery. We will solve later. Now I have more important things to do, like fixing up the island. Yeah. So the way you do this is kind of funny and kind of stupid. I shall start off with a different section. We'll do this one because it's simple. Okay, so watch this. We don't have any sand, but there's a lot of sand here. So what you do is you take it along the edges. You see, we have a ton of dirt and gravel, but no sand. So what you can do is you can mine up the sand, right? Then pillar up and place dirt like this. And then I'm gonna have to, yeah. There we go. that is how you, maybe not like that, but that is generally how you, for cheap, resurface your, destroyed, you know, parts of the environment. I mean, I understand, it's, you know, why would you do this when you can just take, by the way, it doesn't have to be perfect, you know, but, you know, I understand it's like, well, why would you do this when you can just take better care of your coast? But I don't deal in logic or reason. Oh yeah, another thing, so, at the time of filming, I've been working on a few videos. I was mostly working on scripts before I had the, I guess you could say mental energy to record them. So I recorded some stuff. I don't know when I'll get to editing that stuff. I'll see. There's a video, well, there's a few videos. There's a video... Actually, technically, there's two videos which tackle, like, CDs versus cartridges, right? But one of them tackles a, like, they tackle it from completely different angles, where I have no wood. That sucks. So one of the videos tackles it from the perspective of, okay, how did cartridges and CDs, you know... Well, basically, it's more like... Wait, this is limestone? Oh my god, we had a source of limestone the entire time. And I just never found out. Huh, that's kind of crazy. Okay, to continue the story. So, one of the videos has the general sort of thesis being, you know, what did cartridges and CDs, how did that, you know, difference? Specifically, and it's always, you know, N64 versus PS1, because, generally speaking, I mean, first of all, these are English videos, you know, these are videos in English. So... like, I understand there's a lot of, you know, Sega Saturn fans, including myself. But the truth is that the Saturn, as cool as it was kind of irrelevant in the West. So at the end of the day, you run into the little problem where, you know, as much as I'd love to say, oh, but the Saturn was kind of like a PlayStation in a lot of ways. It's just kind of there, and it's kind of a similar system, way more similar to it than the N64. And when we're talking about, like, media formats, what could I, you know, there's nothing really you can say about the Saturn that's that different from the PlayStation. You could be like, oh, but the Sega Saturn didn't have the MJPEG decoder. So most games didn't use MJPEG, they used Cinepack. So the FMV quality was sometimes worse, or it took up more space. Same with the audio slightly, because it had no support for ADP. You know, there's no... You could drag on that kind of argument, but like... Yeah, there's also a video specifically about more about the graphics, what the systems could do, couldn't do, whatever. But, like, one of the videos is like, okay, how did the discs help Sony, basically, because the cartridges were a horrible idea. And, then, you know, loading times this, loading times that. It also mentions that. Because, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the video, which isn't out most likely by the time I'm doing this, loading times are kind of one of those gotcha questions where, they're not asked sincerely, if that makes sense. It's kind of like when, you know, somebody would, let's talk about, like, you know, to take some more recent example, like, if you would imagine there was, like, a discussion argument, screaming contest between, you know, Nintendo and Sony fans, and then, like, or, like, you know, then, it'd be something like, oh, well, the Nintendrones don't have, oh, now it's the Nintendrones that, don't have any, no, wait. There was one specific argument that I saw, which was like, somebody was claiming the Xbox Series S was faster than the Switch, which, maybe on the CPU front, I'm not too well versed in how that would compare because it's a different architecture, but graphically, no. The Switch has more oomph, and it also has a higher, you know, feature set. Well, not a higher feature set, a better feature set. Switch 2, sorry, Switch 2. Switch 1's like a 360 with more RAM and a higher resolution. But, the funny thing is then, like, oh, well, Game Pass? It's just kinda, you know, it's those kinds of gotchas, right? What you get to at the end of the day, loading times were never something that you would really genuinely have an issue with unless you had, like, not even ADHD, just, like, unless you were extremely impatient. If you were a toddler who needed, like, instant gratification so you could clap like a seal, you know? Oh, happy. Feed me an ice cube because I have no taste buds. By the way, a fun seal fact. Seals have no taste buds. They don't know what ice cream tastes like. They physically can't taste ice cream. And because of that, the only way you can reward a seal for good behavior by giving them something to eat, I mean, you can pat them on the head, they are very cute creatures, but what they do in zoos is they reward them with ice cubes, because that's a nice sensation to them, because they're seals, which they can actually understand, and it's the reward system that they have, if I understood what I saw correctly. I could be completely wrong, maybe. I'm not a sealologist. But back to the point, so, yeah, generally speaking, loading times are a really funny gotcha, because, GoldenEye was, one of the better, you know, FPS games on the N64. Was it better than Perfect Dark? I kinda liked GoldenEye more. I don't know why. Maybe it's just gamer bias. I played a bit of both. I have to say I prefer Alien Resurrection, because that one you can natively play with a mouse. But generally speaking, like, Doom 64 was kind of better. But still, they're fun games for what they are. You know, you have to take them with the understanding these are old games. So, of course, then the story turns to, well, what about the loading times? So, if you've actually watched one of my videos, I think I mentioned this at least once before, but I'm gonna make an effort to mention it in, like, every single one of my videos from now on, until people catch on, because people said, oh, well, the 64 megabytes that the N64 had was good enough for some PS1 games. I mean, if you would take all of their, like, textures and music and compress it down to where it kind of looks like shit, it could fit on a 64 megabyte cartridge, which, I mean, yeah, you're fucking correct, but you're forgetting the N64 had 64 megabyte cartridges at the tail end of 1999, and if you would help me do the math here, 1996 was before 99. Okay, I'm being a bit of a dick, but you get what I mean. So I did some, like, back of the envelope, you know, sorta back of the, you know, napkin math, or whatever you call it, right? And, so the way I did this was, there's this really cool site called Nintendo 64 Ever, and they actually listed a huge list of N64 games by their cartridge size. Keep in mind, cartridge size is in megabits, not megabytes, so divide by 8 to get the actual size. And by that, and by some other posts that I've seen online where people discussed it, so 8 and 12 megabyte cartridges were the only cartridges available when the N64 came out. If you wanted to make a game for the N64 early on, it had to fit in 8 or 12 megabytes. Now, I know what you're saying to yourself right now. Wow, that is pathetic. That is genuinely a pathetic file size and explains a lot. Yeah, it is. And that's why Mario 64 was on an 8 megabyte cartridge and why GoldenEye was on a 12 megabyte cartridge. But again, you may be thinking to yourself, but GoldenEye actually had quite a few levels. How do you fit that much data onto one 12 megabyte cartridge? Like, okay, I understand Turok being an 8 megabyte game, even if it had some pretty big levels, but like, you know, GoldenEye had some, you know, pretty diverse levels for what it was. How do they accomplish that? And, you may want to go and watch, like, that one video, or that one series of videos where people talk about how they managed to put Resident Evil 2 on the N64. They used compression. Of course, while you could lossily compress stuff and, kind of cripple the quality in some places, like in RE2, because RE2 was mostly made up of still images and textures and audio files, what they did in order to make the giant that is, fuck my brain, in order to make the giant comparative that GoldenEye was, to make it fit on the cartridge, what they did was they compressed the level data. Now, how do I explain this? There's something called a one-way and a two-way compressor, but it's basically just lossy and lossless. So if you would imagine with lossy data, it just has to resemble the input data, right? Like, it doesn't have to be exact. That's what videos use to not take up 50 terabytes of space. Lossless compression is when you zip a file, because you don't want the file... You don't want the file to be broken. Did that help or hurt me? You know, you don't want a, you don't want your, files to, like, you know, be broken because, well, they were compressed. No, you want the files to actually be, you know, accurate to the original. And because of that, you have to spend a lot more energy to efficiently compress the file, and you also need to spend a lot more energy to decompress the file to its original form, because while a PNG merely, like when you display a PNG, you're merely reinterpreting the compressed data. Not exactly. I mean, no, JPEG, right? But you're basically reinterpreting the compressed data while also decompressing it, but not as much. But, GoldenEye had, like, 8-second loading times. About the same as Quake on the, you know, about the same as Quake on the, fucking Sega Saturn, or Quake 2 on the PS1. And, the more embarrassing part is that Quake on the N64, I tried out the starting level, loads slower than the one on the Sega Saturn, which is quite an incredible achievement, in my humble opinion. You somehow have a game system. That looked like a black fucking blaze, and I got very scared for a moment there. Nintendo somehow made a system which used cartridges with slower loading times than their disc-based competitors. Is that, like, Darwin Award tier yet? But such are the problems with cartridges. It is kind of interesting, though, to kind of look at that sort of stuff, because, like, on one hand, look, there are a lot of people to whom, you know, it's kind of like that issue where, there are a lot of people from a lot of different age groups, right? To me, I actually don't know which system I would have discovered first, for the simple reason that it's kind of complicated, you know? Like, I was a kid until, like, fucking, you know, so I was a kid for, 2000 or whatever. Fucking, when I was first on YouTube as a little kid, I'd argue, yeah, I probably saw Mario 64 first. Like, I'm a zoomer. I didn't know what the N64 was. I probably knew what Mario 64 was well before the Nintendo 64. Because what would that even mean to me? You know, like, to me, I just didn't know about that. And then I never had a Wii, because, I don't know. And then some of my friends who did have a Wii, played virtual console games and discovered Nintendo that way. But no, I watched, YouTube and found, the AVGN, the Irate Gamer, and the Game Dude. Maybe not the Game Dude. No, but yeah. Generally speaking, what I'm trying to say, right? To a lot of people, they have some kind of emotional attachment to a lot of, and this is the next thing I'm gonna say is completely true. Apologies. So a lot of people have like genuine emotional attachments to stuff for various reasons in their lives, and a lot of people who don't look at most people don't try to take a hypercritical eye at literally everything. They just like things, and they just enjoy them, and they don't think about why. They're just happy enjoying the things they enjoy. And the end result of this is, you have a lot of people who will just defend the things they liked as kids, even if, because they still do like it. They don't really know that, you see people comment how Mario 64 plays just as well as it did before, as if it could rot away. So whenever you mention the fact that, and this is the worst part about Mario 64, when you stop and try to turn around on a small platform, Mario will just run to the side and fall off. Why? Oh, it's just some annoying control quirk that Nintendo never truly properly figured out, and you just kinda have to deal with it. Also, I did this wrong. I'm gonna run out of shovel. It's gonna be a problem. But yeah, like, what you're gonna run into is people who will just defend their system, or defend their perspective. Even if, generally speaking, how do I say this? I don't know. I try to keep my stuff, and I know I recently watched a video that was kind of critical of this specific idea, but there's this whole difference between, if something is objective and if something is subjective. Now, in my humble opinion, you can't make a good objective review of something. At most, an objective review can be, either functional or non-functional. You can't have a good or bad objective review. This is because with an objective review, let's imagine I am trying to review a graphics card, right? A functional graphics card review would be, I would show my testing methodology, I would test the graphics card, I would report on its performance compared to the GPU, and I would then show, how that performance maybe compares to the price, to the power, to the feature set, and then I would say, thanks for watching, goodbye. And at that point in time, that would be it. But whenever one of these reviewers then says at the end of the video, because there's quite a few channels which do this in, like, pretty high quality, but at the end of the video, they're always like, so guys, please don't buy the 5060. Especially not the 8GB. I think, wait, there may only be the 8GB one. I haven't been paying too close attention, but... And then it's like, yeah, please don't buy it, it's a piece of shit. Yeah, he's correct. But you're still not objective. That is a subjective part of the video. Because you've now reviewed a product, objectively, you've shown how it performs, and now you're giving your objective opinions. Why is the 5060 8GB, which seems to be performing fine, not that good? Well, it's an 8GB card, and from your experience and knowledge of the gaming market, you assume that, and this will obviously most likely happen, and the people who are saying it will happen are probably 100% correct, that 8GB cards are just going to be outdated by, you know, in a few years when games are now properly using more and more VRAM. Of course, it's not that big of an issue as many people like to pretend it is, because you can always, you know, lower your settings. The far bigger issue is RT, like ray tracing, because that uses more VRAM just because of how it works. So even if you have worse textures, you're sometimes gonna still hit bottlenecks where the VRAM just isn't enough to run the game while you're ray tracing it, you know? And considering some games like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle need ray tracing support to even boot, yeah, people are gonna have problems. And because of all of this, you can then say the card is good or bad, even if it's technically subjective. And that's why subjectivity is still important in reviews, no matter how much some scam artists on YouTube may tell you otherwise. You just have to be, okay? It's just the way it works. But excluding that little tidbit, I think the far more important thing is that I have tried to make videos which were relatively objective, right? Because there is a difference between an opinion piece and, you know, a review of something which is actually based on facts, right? Like, if you would imagine an opinion piece where I said, I really like Minecraft. Maybe, wait, no, I have to actually I have to do it in good faith. If I made some kind of opinion piece, or hit piece, as some people described multiple videos of mine, they never are, I'm sorry. I'm not that funny. If I made a hit piece in something and I was like, this is why, blah, blah, you know, if I had to actually give you my true, honest-to-God opinions on the N64, well, first of all, there would be a witch hunt, but second of all, it wouldn't even be that extreme. Oh, I should have made a new shovel. My main issue, if you haven't been following me for a while, my main issue of the N64 is that it used cartridges. Though that is generally when I made a video that was like, oh, what were the actual limitations of these systems? And by the end, I had an emulator developer tell me that I'm correct, and I had some random guy who, well, probably wasn't an emulator developer, comment at basically the same time to tell me that I didn't know what I was talking about and that I should probably stop making those kinds of videos. Why did I want to shame that one person in particular? Well, because it's funny. And also the fact I had a guy who knows his stuff better than I do tell me, wow, you're correct. It's a nice ego boost to know that I'm always right. Please don't take that seriously. But yeah, generally speaking, like, if I had to tell you my genuine, you know, what if it's not beta, my genuine, unfiltered dog shit opinion, I really dislike the, just general game library. I mean, yeah, there are good games. There's Mario 64, there's Ocarina of Time, but the games, well, they are good. They aren't... There's a specific thing which I try to generally fight against, and it's the idea of things being special, especially in the creative space, right? Because there's this kind of harmful idea towards wannabe artists. And if you're wondering, the difference between a wannabe artist and a real artist is putting pen to paper. All it takes to become a real artist is to make art. That's it. If you're a wannabe artist, it means that you're somebody who really wants to do art, but for some reason doesn't. And for a lot of people, it's often an ego thing. But not an ego thing in the way that, oh, I could do it better, but in the opposite way. Where a lot of people think that, you know, they look at, in whatever they're doing, in this case, let's say video games, right? A lot of people will see a big company like Nintendo with such a big history of From Software or whatever other company, and they'll think to themselves, wow, look at how cool these companies are. God, I wish I could make a game 1%, you know, as 1% as good as them. And then they never actually make a video game because it's a really hard, arduous process, especially for solo devs, and they just kind of end up living their life mostly the same, but slightly less happy because they can't pursue the hobby that they would generally want to pursue if they could. And I am somebody who really wants to fight against that idea that, you know, there's something which makes From Software special or better at making games than, you know, any particular person could be if they actually, you know, put their soul into it. And, you know, of course, the thing with indie games is most people don't play most indie games, right? Chances are, if you make an indie game, you're gonna make a game which is gonna have nearly no impact. And that's fine. There are some honestly heinous indie game takes that I have. I'll leave them for next video. The video isn't ending, but I'll leave them for next day. I'll leave them, yeah, for next, video, just because there's nothing really that connects the 2 points. But, yeah, so you can look forward to that. So, generally speaking, I'll just, you know, I can't be arsed, I'm just gonna put this in. We don't need all the sand. Nobody's gonna know. But yeah, generally speaking, I kind of really enjoy the aspect of just kind of tearing down the... This is why I kind of like those videos where people tear down old games and just generally find, you know, all the kinds of weird-ass little bugs which break everything. It's a very humanizing thing to show how even the games which people consider great are, like, just as full of holes as a lot of modern games, and even those games can often be full of holes. So, I guess if I had to say something, you know, whenever people look at, you know, a lot of the modern game dev stuff, they'll look at examples that are like, you know, they'll look at, for instance, you know, back in time, they'll look at the N64 maybe, and that's kind of... honestly, it's hard to put into words the genuine frustration that I have. But I think if I could put it into words, it'd be something like this. I really dislike when, you know, I see things that I don't think are worth the praise get praise. That is because there's a limited amount of praise in the world, and I think that respect should be given to more than just whatever's popular. I don't know if you can tell, but I don't exactly play the most popular stuff, excluding maybe Minecraft. At least at the time of filming. Mario Galaxy was a popular game, you know? But generally speaking, I mostly just play the stuff I like. Oh wait, I need to redo that, damn it. And with the N64, it feels like at least some of the games where I see people, you know, talk about them, the way I see people talk about them whenever they look back, it's kind of annoying because of the types of guys I see talk about them. There's this kind of, and I hold no ill will towards these kinds of people, right? But there's this kind of podcast bro, if you get what I mean, where they're gonna be like, hey guys, yo, today we're gonna be talking about the Nintendo 64. So, Bill, what's your favorite? My favorite has to be Bubsy. No, wait, wrong system. My favorite just kinda has to be the one and the only Buck Bumble. When, I could get into this later. I don't know. My general, if I had to, I know I'm kind of turning this into a joke, but if I had to explain, my biggest issue is just that, like, people will give N64 games a pre-pass for some kind of shitty shit. One thing which I kind of, it's kind of an interesting thing, there's this guy called Thabist, Thabist, I forgot his name, I'm sorry, 721, and he's playing through the entire N64 library, and I do mean all of them, he also means all of them, and the twist is that he doesn't know which game is next, and he's on a journey to, I'm basically just, if you get what I'm doing, you get what I'm doing, but, one thing which is really, really fun to see is that he isn't nostalgia blind, if that makes sense, He isn't a video essayist who's, he's more of a reviewer, honestly. It's not like a professional review, it's more like a watch him play the game and then he says how he feels about it at the end. But, one thing which I really like about his videos is that very often he isn't nostalgia blind. Whenever there's a game that's kinda crappy or kinda frustrating, because he is going through every single N64 game, he isn't, talking about, let's say, Turok 2. That was a game he played semi-recently and really disliked, and I have to agree with him. At least the N64 version. Night Dive did a good job porting it. But in his video, he airs so many frustrations, which you usually wouldn't really see, because a lot of the time when games like Turok get discussed, they're only really discussed by fans. And because these games are so old, very rarely do we actually see the takes of somebody who actually had, somebody who's kind of a normie. I had a video that got a kind of dislike bomb that I made, which was kind of funny. I mean, dislike bombs, they don't do as much as people leaving the video early, but it is what it is. It was a video that I made, it was kind of, a play on... It was a serious video in the execution, but not in the premise. It was comparing Jumping Flash to Turok, to see which one was the better game. Jumping Flash 2 specifically. Because I thought it was just kind of funny that Jumping Flash and Turok both were first-person games with platforming and shooting, and the joke was that I died more to platforming when I tried to play Turok than I did to the actual enemies. And then I watched some reviews of... Well, no, I didn't watch reviews. I read reviews where game reviewers back then were kind of critical of the same thing, and I've seen some people air similar frustrations with the game today, so I just thought, yeah, I'll make the video. And the video was kind of just assaulted for its premise and not for any of the points I made. There was also, this one comment, which I'm very quickly... I have it somewhere screenshotted. Here we go. Graphically, no PS1 first-person shooter could handle the devastating power of animation of Turok the Dinosaur Hunter's Fusion Cannon or Chronoscepter, or rather, any of the heavy weapons featured in Turok Dinosaur Hunter. Now here's a little hint for you non-console nerds. So, the N64 could support something called alpha blending, which is the more accurate type of, transparency. The PS1 couldn't actually support that kind of transparency, but it could support a different type, called additive and subtractive, and when you combine them, you get the same thing, basically, sort of. But the thing with additive blending was that you could use it to get some really good-looking explosions because of the way it worked. And that meant, if you catch my drift, explosions on the PS1 and, you know, let's say city lights, night lights, and general, you know, neon looks a lot better on PlayStation. And, it's just kind of funny reading these kinds of comments. And, well, granted, my original response to this, when I shared it with some friends, was to, take just about, like, the least... just, like, the least fair, worst screenshot of Turok I think I just got from, like, I think I just took, like, you know, a fucking print screen of the long play that I googled, and it's just, like, Turok, standing there with, like, a knife in his hands on a 240p video, staring into the fog, and, I specifically picked the frame. I think I scrubbed through the video to find, like, just the frame where the game looked the most disappointing. Just because it's funny. I know it's, like, technically cheating or whatever, but it wasn't in the fucking video. It was fucking... it was a fucking joke to a funny comment I got. I hope the guy isn't mad now. Probably doesn't know what it is. But, I don't know. It was just kind of funny to read. God, imagine if it was a troll comment, too. That would be even funnier. But, look, it is what it is. This is the 40-minute video now. I try to keep them 30 minutes, but whatever. I wanted to finish the topic. Oh, this won't be done in one video. See you next time. Goodbye! And then the Markiplier outro plays for some reason.